Hi, my name is Mark Newman. I'm CEO and founder of HireVue. The way HireVue works is our core mission is to enable people to tell their story and to demonstrate their ability to work, and to do that by removing any type of friction around interacting with employers. So we want to make job interviews, which are life-changing experiences, awesome. So we invented this thing called the on-demand interview, where people take the interview on their own time through mobile devices or webcams, where they answer questions one by one that get recorded for review by employers. We also offer all sorts of other interview types, coding challenges, live interviews, you name it. Because it's this idea of how do you tell your story and demonstrate your ability to work and do it in a way that you aren't represented by a resume or a profile, you're represented by who you are, your stories, your experiences, and ideas for the future. With statistics out there about talking about a talent shortage of 35% of employers saying globally that there is, and 49% in the US, I don't think there actually is a talent shortage. I think there's a shortage in the skills to be able to find that talent. Because a lot of times people say, I have to find somebody with this perfect profile to fill this position. They need 12 years experience of X, yet the programming language has only been around for 3. People apply for jobs through what are called like applicant tracking systems, and you see a job posting online, you apply for it, you put in your resume. What's actually little known is the fact that only 4% of candidates actually even have their resume reviewed in those systems. So it's a black hole. Those systems generally have screening criteria. Oh, how many X years of experience do you have? Do you have these keywords? Do you have those various elements? The friction in this market is, at a certain point in time, you used to be able to post a job because the jobs were more simple, and you'd get applicants to this job at a localized level and you could make your decision. Well, jobs are becoming more complex. A marketing person 10 years ago could maybe build some content and do some stuff, and now you have to have a good understanding of digital marketing, and that's a different skill set than existed before. And so ultimately, for the best organizations in the world, or frankly every organization in the world, recruiting is a competitive sport. It's reframing how you think about finding the right person and saying, it's actually not about them having specific experience in this specific skill set that may or may not have even existed before. It's actually understanding what's their school of experience. The Professor Clayton Christensen from Harvard University has this idea of what's your school of experience? What did you learn from other use cases essentially that help you apply to it, to your work today? So did you, go door to door when you were a kid or a young adult, whether it was on like a church mission or working, trying to do odd jobs for neighbors and trying to build your own business? Well, so when you go and apply for a job and you say, oh, well, I did door to door that, and they're like, well, you can't do, project management or technology or whatever. And you're like, well, no, actually, I learned sales at that young age and I can do sales today. A good friend of mine had on his resume farmer. I'm like, Court, you really have farmer on your resume? Like, okay, well, let's talk about what your school of experience was, right? What is it? And I was like, how big of a, did you do like a 100-acre farm or what? He's like, oh no, he's like, I managed a team. I'm like, okay, you were a manager. And I'm like, what sort of equipment did you use? He's like, oh, $20 million worth of equipment, because it's this big kind of giant farming equipment. I said, okay, capital intensive. And I'm like, and did you do this for like 100 acres? And he's like, no, we did it for 243,000 acres in our biggest season. And I'm like, and how old were you when you did this? He's like, 19. I'm like, okay, you're not a farmer. Right? You're a project manager, you manage capital equipment, you have large-scale projects, and you manage teams of people that were much older and experienced than you. That's kind of the school of experience that you need to do. Same thing in technical skills. Do you have 7 years of Python development expertise? Well, it hasn't even been around that long. But if you're able to use code to build applications, to do this, to solve business problems or whatever it is, and you're able to do that, that's pretty powerful. The skill of identifying that and understanding that isn't in existence and at a high enough level inside of the world's kind of companies today. And if you think about on the global level, if you think about like culturally, there's a lot more kind of emerging market economies that kind of have a more scrappy culture of where you kind of figure things out, you get things done. And I think if American companies had a deeper resourcefulness around finding and understanding that school of experience when it comes to trying to build their teams, there wouldn't be a skills shortage out there because they'd realize it's right in front of them. HireVue's role in all of that is that's really hard to teach. But if you already crack the process and the technology to be able to support that and you can scale it, we can kind of drastically reduce the ramp time to figure that out. Inside of HireVue, we have this big data, deep talent analytics engine called HireVue Iris. And what Iris does is we say, listen, here are the best people inside of your organization. And frankly, here are the worst, right? Here are the difference of it. Here's how people do things differently. It's not about just GPA, it's about how people think and communicate and interact and all those various elements. That acts as a baseline to then automatically recommend people that match that as they kind of come in and do interviews for you. And so that's a really kind of powerful way to do a really high volume, scalable hiring programs inside of companies. Even if you're only hiring 1 or 2 or 3 people though, whether it's coding challenges or just consistency in interviewing and reducing the variance so that everybody can kind of interview the same way, and more so even empowering candidates who may be in jobs, maybe in school and whatever it is, to not have to take 6 hours off to go and interview at 2 o'clock in the afternoon one day, but to do it on their own time, really drives like a really inclusive process that helps you find your best. So if we can enable people to tell their story and talk about their school of experience and then demonstrate their ability to work, we kind of think of it as like a market issue with too much friction in the market and it needs more liquidity. If you think your potential pool of talent for a job is like 7 people and they're existing all over the country and you need one in Utah, we're like, no, it probably is about 5,000 people and they can be anywhere. And you just have to understand who they are, what they're about, and how they think, and you'd be able to fill the jobs that you're trying to do today. We help hire, hundreds of thousands of people a year for our customers. Even inside of HireVue, we hired a guy named Christian Horn, who was 15 years old, literally, when he came and worked for us. He didn't even finish high school yet he was part of the Python user group here in Salt Lake, and he found out that we were a Python shop and said, I want to come and work there. And we were thinking, okay, what's he going to do here? Well, it turns out he used the Python coding language to teach himself calculus and how to program and could solve PhD level programming questions. And he went through this entire kind of challenge set and whatever, and he came and joined our team. And we do that every single day for kind of the biggest companies in the world. You could definitely not have found him without HireVue. Because frankly, if he just applied for a job online, he wouldn't have even got a shot. Thomas Friedman and the idea of the world is flat is an interesting idea. And even what's kind of funny is that the book's about 15 years old now. And a lot of it's kind of coming true. It's really less about shrinking the world and more around empowering the workforce of today versus what it was yesterday. So HireVue is 200 people. We have people in 25 different states, give or take, and 5 different countries. We're only a 200-person organization. 20 years ago, that couldn't exist. Right? And so that's happening in all sorts of companies all over the world, regardless of size. So whether you're doing a startup and next thing you know, you have people in Ukraine and Philippines and all over Africa and whatever it is doing freelance work for you to help you kind of get things set up, or whatever it might be, it's less about shrinking the world and more about how do we empower the workforce of today where, guess what, you're working on a 24/7 schedule, not an 8/5 schedule. And you have people who, they might be working 40 hours a week, but guess what, they're working at 40 hours a week and that 40 hours is during, while you're sleeping. And all those various elements. So how do we support those needs? And how do we support our customers who might be hiring 70,000 people a year, like at JP Morgan, yet 30,000 are in the US, 20,000 are in this country, 10,000 are there, 5,000 are here, and there's 40,000 people inside the organization that move around each year. That's the big kind of hairy problem that we help address, so it's a lot of fun. The number one reason why companies struggle in their international growth and hiring behind it all is, first off, they want to hire people like them in completely different market contexts. So if you're based in Utah and you try to hire people just the same way as you hire people in Utah and you're trying to do that in Malaysia, it's not going to work. You have to have a deep understanding around social norms, cultural norms, how the markets happen, how business works there, and all those various things, and kind of hire a local, don't try to hire a Utahn. The second one is you don't actually communicate kind of the mission, the vision, the core values, the fundamentals of the business on a regular basis with the other crews around the world. As soon as you do that, no doubt you're going to have fiefdoms in different places, in different countries, and different vibes and all these various elements. And when you're a miscalibrated or misaligned team, stuff happens, right? Results don't get hit, deals don't get closed, products don't get sold. At least they might, but not as great or at a level that they should be. If you can be mindful and patient and kind of stick to like the outcomes that you're trying to work towards, the goals that you're working towards, and understanding that on a big project, that's not going to happen tomorrow. And if it doesn't happen tomorrow, you shouldn't pivot. You should actually kind of stick to it and go after it, and you're mindful of that all. The company will be built that you want to build, a great company will be built, not a crappy one. The project will be delivered on, and you'll execute on your goals.